Welcome to Doc9 Tech Talks.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Plastid. I'm Managing Director of Doc9, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Martin Hess, who is Managing Director of Cancom UK. So in today's episode, we're going to focus on the hot topic of reopening offices. When should offices reopen? How would this work in practice? And perhaps, do we even need offices in future? So Martin really caught my attention a few weeks ago, as he was quite vocal in the press on the topic. And actually, I think Cancom have been a bit ahead of the curve in terms of reopening their office. So I think should have some really useful insights to share with us today. So firstly, Martin, good morning and thanks for joining us.
Hello, Mark. Good morning. Delighted to.
Good. So in terms of, before we dive into this topic, do you want to give us a quick overview about yourself and Cancom when you started?
Yeah, I guess I'd be labelled these days as an industry veteran. I've been in the IT business, which we now call tech because it sounds a lot cooler, for not far short of 40 years. Big companies such as IBM, HP, and a sprinkling of small companies and startups as well along the way. The company I currently run, I was chairman of, and then I sold it to it was a private company that I sold to a big German IT services company called Cancom, based in Munich. They asked me to stay on and run it, so I now run the UK subsidiary, which is about 550 employees spread across the whole of the UK and Northern Ireland. And we turn over about 160 odd million, mainly services. We run companies' IT for them in the managed services. We've also got a public cloud business. We help clients move their applications to the public cloud, particularly Microsoft Azure, and we've got a consultancy business, as well as a traditional reseller product, hardware and software. So a mixed business. Our German parent leaves us alone, so we can sort of pretty much get on with it and do it ourselves. We've got offices in the city in Shoreditch, down in Sussex, Cambridgeshire, near Manchester and Belfast. So we've got a reasonable spread.
Cool, sounds good. So I guess in terms of you as a company, from an infrastructure point of view, I guess you were pretty much well set up to work from home and make that switch in a few months ago. But I guess I'd be really interested to find out more about the transition from a business and cultural perspective. How was that transition for Cancom?
What, going from when lockdown started, going back to home, working from home?
Yeah.
It was a remarkable success. If you think nearly every job we had could be performed at home, so we made sure that even those that didn't have their laptops, they got their laptops. We were set up with Microsoft Teams, so most of us were reasonably comfortable using Teams because we'd used it already. So that transition was pretty straightforward. And to be honest, the company, we found the company could function working from home. It sort of got the job done. That there was a small number of jobs in a warehouse that we've got, which we need to build computers and what have you. We kept that open because they couldn't do that from home. Yeah. But pretty much everybody else worked from home. And if you think late March through April into mid-May, the emphasis was on protection, looking after everybody, making sure people didn't feel they were going to lose their jobs. We didn't furlough anybody. We didn't make anybody redundant. We haven't taken a penny from the government. We did lots of things. I did a call every Monday to the whole company to reassure them that, and then we did. How do we stay engaged? Because in this sort of atomized world, we sort of had quizzes. Yeah. Bingo, music bingo, fancy dress parties, and we had the pub opened at 4:00 on the Friday, the Cancom Arms, and then so we did all that stuff. So keep morale up and to keep people feeling connected. So the company functioned, I would say, working from home.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so I guess that leads on to the next question of thinking forward to the future. If it can function well at home, why were you so early in terms of pushing to reopen your offices?
I think it functions well at home, but I don't think it performs well at home. I think that I think we were losing our edge. I think it was going from sort of 80% down to, these are made up numbers generally speaking, but I think we were basically going 80, 70, 60%. Now we provide a managed service to our clients, and that's measured by service level agreements, how quickly we respond to calls, etc., how quickly we fix problems. We actually have got some empirical data which shows that was slipping a bit. I wouldn't broadcast that to the whole world, but it was beginning to slip, and it's very hard to win new business when you're all at home. It functions. You keep the thing going along, nudging along, but it's not. To me, it was never the preferred state. Just because you can do your email at home and you can do Zoom or Teams calls doesn't mean it's the desired state. So we survived. We did pretty well financially, but I was always looking for the opportunity to, it's about going through the gears. We were going through in second gear, and I saw as time was going on, when you confuse your work head and your home head, and you're sort of playing around with both in the course of the day. And I was using myself as an example. I was getting up later. I was in survival mode. I wasn't in growth mode. And so using myself as an example, this can't carry on for too much longer, because we'll get into the wrong state of mind, the wrong behaviour.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting perspective, and I guess using myself as an example as well. So I think we all saw these articles and some quite bold predictions about the death of the offices. Cities would empty, people would work remotely and forevermore, and live happily ever after. A lot of bold predictions like that. But actually thinking about myself, I've got 3 young children at home. Not unique in that. We were trying to homeschool 2, look after a baby. It was quite an intense period to do all of that and work and lead an agency within 4 walls. And so I think something that was perhaps spoken about a little bit less was, logistically you can work from home, but actually, from a in terms of the edge that you talked about, there is something beneficial once I've started to go back in the office now, just once a week to start with, around that mindset shift. I'm actually in a different space. I think it's good for the mind as well. But also, a kind of ancillary benefit, which I never considered before, was I've got quite a long commute. So it's 4 hours a day, driving and walking, door to door, it's 2 hours each way. And I always viewed that as quite a negative thing and moaned. But actually, in hindsight, that was such a good amount of thinking time I had every day, and actually a good sort of distinction between home and work life. And I think that's probably something that was spoken about a bit less. Did you find sort of similar?
Yeah, totally. Actually, I missed out one really important thing, which is why, I've got a nice room which I call a study. I do my work in, but that's not typical, particularly for younger folks. Who could be in an apartment, they could be in a flat, or young families with kids away from school. So there's a lot of people where working from home just wasn't good. It was just not conducive to being focused and full on, and so I was very mindful that this must be driving a lot of people really mad. But that sort of delineation of I'm at work or I'm at home, I think is massively important. And the day never ended when I was working at home, because you kept on going on to the evening to catch up on email, or you do the odd call in the evening, and then you start early. And I think psychologically it was just bad news to me, because it all blurred into one existence. And I live in Brighton, and I'm probably up in London 2 or 3 days a week, and I come into our office near Horsham. I like that break. I do, and that sense of when you go home, you've done a day's work. There's a sense of satisfaction there that I was never getting when I was just working from home. And I realise I'm of a personality type that might perhaps need the office more, but everybody, I think, eventually needs the office. But we can come on to that.
So I guess before we kind of get on to more thinking long term, how we will manage having offices with perhaps some more work from home in future, we're really interested to hear a bit more about your story of reopening your office? Because I think it was a couple, over a month ago that you
Back in May, we opened the office.
Could you walk our audience through like the process of, logistically as well, how you manage that?
So the Prime Minister, I think it was sort of mid-May, he sort of made the announcement of these sort of 4 stages, didn't he, of emerging from lockdown, and so it was the sort of first release from lockdown, and I thought, right, okay, that's the cue to open the offices back up. So I talked it through with my senior management team. I suppose the first realization was I was probably slightly out of kilter with most of my team. They were still very much in lockdown mode. One or two, I think my sales director was very much of my opinion, but I can't say there was a clamour to open the office. But I really did feel very strongly about it, that we needed to signal that we were getting out. It was a signal to say we were getting out of this lockdown, self-preservation, stay safe mentality, and to me, opening the offices was the signal that we're moving into a different phase now. That this is about trying to normalize, trying to get back to where we were, to put more energy in, to put more edge into the business. The emphasis on growing the business rather than just surviving. We put a very, very comprehensive playbook together, which I'm very happy to share with you. So we had to obviously get the risk. We did risk assessments for all our officers that got because we didn't want there to be somebody who sort of whistle blew on us and reported us to the HS, the health and safety executive. So we were absolutely thorough. We assigned somebody to be responsible for making sure all the officers were ready. So all the PPE was there, the one-way systems into the office, spacing out desks. In fact, we had a pretty stringent booking system for desks initially. For the first couple of weeks, I think it was, we put the meeting rooms off limits. And then I communicated it verbally and then in an email. And I wanted to get the tone right because I didn't want people to feel bullied back to coming back. So made it absolutely clear as anything that this was voluntary. But I did make the point that this is really aimed at people who are very uncomfortable working from home, giving them the option for whatever reason, whether it be children or not enough space or the mental state. It was addressing those. There were people who felt that, well, is it going to work against my career if I don't come back into the office? So I had to re-emphasize that it wouldn't. And we took a decision that we wouldn't. We just see how it went. But we did. We opened the offices on the 26th of May, which seems like an eternity ago. And it was a trickle. The other thing is, lead from the front, and I'm sure you agree, Mark. So I was in the offices, and made sure on the video calls I was seen to be in the offices. And my sales director was, and one or two others, and it was slowly but surely. I mean, the first week it was a bit of a non-event because there weren't too many people back. Second week it got a bit more, and you know what? We didn't get over anxious about it. We let things take their course, and where are we now? We are now not far short. We're probably a week short of the 2-month anniversary, and it's got to a really good state. People are coming back to the offices now.
If you don't mind sharing, what proportion of people are back in the office now versus working from home?
Well, we got some jobs where you'd be in the same place all the time, and then we got a lot of transient type workers, like we've got a sales force, we've got consultants and what have you. I think of those that want to come back to an office, I'm going to ask Emma to verify the number. I reckon we're up to 80% of people who want to come back to an office are using an office now at one time or another. Would you say? I mean, it might even be higher than that.
Okay.
So, and the other thing is, what about, am I going to chain everybody at the desk from Monday to Friday? Well, obviously that's changed forever now. We're not going to do that. How we get the balance right, I haven't mandated it really. It sort of varies from team to team. Our finance team can work from home, so we're not going to get them back 5 days a week. But there are going to be times in the month where the finance director wants them all in the office.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a bit varied. The group of people we wanted to get back, and this might sound a bit of a contradiction. We wanted the sales force to get out of this work from home, take the dog for a walk at 10 in the morning, all that. No, because to get out of this, the sales force needed to basically go out and engage with clients, win business. And although they come into the office and go and come and go, we made a point of getting them back into the office and lead from the front. And so the sales director had things like call-out days where he brought a bunch into the office. Social distancing rules, yes, there were the 2 meters apart, and then they were in different offices around the country to get them. So they called 600 customers that day, Emma, and that was another signal that no, we're moving back to a normal world. So. Yeah, I'm pleased with where it. I'm pleased with where it is now. I don't think I have to get heavy.
Okay.
That's the nice thing.
Because you've got offices outside of London, and
you
mentioned an office in Shoreditch, very trendy. Is there and I think the difference, I guess, with London is a lot more emphasis on people using public transport. Do you see a big difference in your offices outside London versus in terms of people wanting to get back in?
Not really, because London's always been an office where I'd say you've probably got about a dozen people that need to be there all the time.
Okay.
And then at any one time, you can have another 30 or 40 people using it, because they're in for a meeting, or they're in for 2 days and then they're out seeing a client. So it's one of those offices. There was a lot. The big fear was London, London. That's where you're going to catch it.
Yeah.
So when I went up there, I didn't go, not deliberately, but I didn't go for the first 2 weeks. Sort of early June I went up. I took pictures of Brighton Station, I took pictures on the train, I took pictures at London Bridge, I took pictures of the streets, and to reassure everybody that this was safe. So we use social media a lot, actually. Lots of people into the office, as we said, if you go to the office, take a picture, stick it on our WhatsApp group or our Yammer group and share it, so that we can, because there was a lot of this, it's amazing, the fear of the unknown, the fear of what's it like to get a train again. What's it like to get the underground? And so I got on the underground, once again, sort of lead from the front. And I kept on, and also, so the fear of London, I'd say for nearly everybody, has been overcome now. There are probably one or two, but yes, it was top of the fear league initially, and I think we've cracked it. So also things like my management meetings, I'm having them in London.
Okay.
I'm having them face to face. So there is a specific event people have to come in for.
Because I've been going in sort of once a week for roughly a month now. We're based in the city on Leadenhall Street, and it, the first time it was really a ghost town, and sadly there's quite a few local independent like cafes and stuff already. There's repossession notices on the front. You can see the impact this is having. But I have to say, especially last week when I went in, it did feel there's a bit more of a buzz. There's a bit more. The momentum did seem to be building. A few things open. I made a point of going, and Pret was the only one open at the time around the corner, so having a Pret and I think that's really important. People forget about.
That's the other thing I've been saying, Mark, on the calls, which is you don't travel, might be nice, might mean you haven't got that commute, but it also means you're not spending money, and if you're not spending money, businesses are closing and people are losing their jobs. And I have made a point to the company and said, look, every single one of us has got a responsibility, I think, out there. to get the economy moving, because it's somebody's job, you know, whether it be the 4,000 people of upper crust that have lost their jobs because nobody's walking through stations. You know, there is a sort of duty we've all got. So I know little old Cancom with 500 people isn't going to change the world, but you know, I do feel leaders of business have got a responsibility to try and get people moving again, because travel means spend, which basically means jobs.
I agree. Yeah, for those in a position that can do that, I think that's definitely completely agree on the same page on that. So I guess before we think about the future and the future role of offices and how that perhaps fits in with more working from home, if you know, a more hybrid role, is there anything you can share in terms of, you mentioned before around a playbook, perhaps we could link to on our podcast links. Is there any, could you paint the picture for those that haven't opened their offices again yet, in terms of, you mentioned PPE and the reorganisation within the office, like what practical steps did you take or did you have to take?
Well, we had a one-way system.
Okay.
We made sure people couldn't come in and just use any desk, so they had to book a desk. So
you already have hot desking as a principle before?
Yeah, we did. We did. So we had hot desking. So we moved away from that. So you had to book it. There was a booking system for desks, and so obviously they could be, you know, they could be cleaned every day. Loads of hand sanitizers. We've got a temperature thermometer that people could that people could use. We did open meeting rooms after 2 weeks, and then we took a load of chairs out. So we made sure that there was only a certain number of chairs in the meeting room. So you had to socially distance because there weren't enough chairs. So practical things like that. And we sort of, once they went to the 1 meter plus rule, we sort of increased the we increased the number of chairs, toilets. It was a 1 in, 1 out. You know, so you know, which I thought would cause more problems than it has done, but it hasn't. What else have I ever got to? I think that was it really.
In some pictures of offices where they've got, you know, big perspex screens between, I guess.
We didn't do that. We didn't do that. No. And I suppose, you know, Mark, you get to the point where you say, look, you know, people are going to come to their own conclusions. This has done all sorts of things to people's heads, isn't it? And some people have reacted differently depending on personality types. All you can do is nudge and show people that actually it's safe and people are going back, and actually there's a bit of a buzz back, and you know, and actually one of those two has now come back. But yeah,
I think also the government, obviously they're kind of, there's a little bit of ambiguity in their advice around, you know, work from home if you can, and obviously there's some ambiguity there in terms of, you know, can somebody work from home in an environment physically, but also there's a mental aspect of, you know, if they're juggling stuff or whatever, or don't have a huge amount of space at home. But I've heard rumours, I think they're about to shift that advice because they've started to realise, well, actually, you know, if you look around London, it's still a ghost town largely. All the ancillary jobs, cafes, etc., that need this footfall. I've heard rumours they're about to switch that advice on its head, so it's kind of come into the work if you can. Maybe that will see a bit more momentum in that direction, I guess.
Yeah. The trouble is, in the sort of jobs we do, and you can work from home. You know, you can't build a house, or you know, you can't do a construction job at home. So, you know, certain jobs you can't, but we can. And I don't think big companies are helping here either. I think 1 second, my battery. Didn't plug it in properly. My battery was running low on my laptop. Sorry, Mark.
That's the best of us.
I don't think big companies are helping here. You see, you know, it doesn't help that Google and Microsoft say they're not opening until January, because a lot of people will take their lead from that, and I just don't think they've thought through the implications of what they're saying. I don't think it's good for the psyche of the individual. Now, somebody will say, well, I'm an exception because I'm in much better shape than I was. But I do think the vast majority of people are struggling. And, you know, it'd be worth us talking. I just think the office has got a really important role to play going forward, and we can talk about, why that is. But I think it's been ignored. I think too much. I think the sort of default is you don't need an office anymore, and what's the future of the office? Well,
I think that leads on to a really nice place to kind of round up, I guess. So thinking about the future. So I'm completely on the same page in many respects. So not to discount, there are massive lessons we can learn from this. And I think, certainly for me, it's opened my eyes to, we had to switch to being a remote-only company almost instantly. And as you say, I'm really proud of how our team have adapted, and we delivered, amazing work. And it was a pretty intense time. A lot of our clients as well, we had to roll out some pretty rapid projects, delivering some services our clients needed to help them through that. However, as time goes on, there's positive lessons to learn from that. But I also think that, in hindsight and taking stock of it, we don't want to forget the positive aspects on office as well. So certainly what we're thinking is it's going to be some form of hybrid between the two. So we don't, as you alluded to earlier, we don't need people in the office 9 to 5 every day necessarily. In our business, there are certain phases of a project, particularly discovery, ideation, where that creative energy you get from being in the same room, you can't really replace that to the same level remotely. So we're thinking about kind of hybrid kind of working in future. What's your kind of vision? What do you think the future role will be within working patterns of the office?
I use the same expression. I think it will be hybrid. I do think there's no doubt that I don't think we'll go back to clock in at 9 o'clock on a Monday and out at 5:30. I think those days have gone forever. You see, I think offices. I mean, age profile for a start. I think if you sort of haven't yet formed your family, coming to the office is massively important. It's where you meet people. It's where your social life is. And it's all well and good somebody in their sort of late 40s and 50s who've got their partner, they've got the children, and they're in suburbia somewhere. They perhaps don't need the social dimension, but for youngsters, I think it's absolutely crucial to their sense of enjoyment of in a job and their whole development. And I think you learn better from more experienced people when you're in the office. I think that experience rubs off on less experienced people. I think there is an energy that you get from being together in teams. I think you get more innovation and ideas. Somebody put it to me beautifully that they said, look, you're in the office, you have the 5-minute chat as you pass somebody in the corridor, or you're at the coffee bar, and you can have 3, 4, 5 conversations in the space of half an hour that don't need more than about a 5-minute. How are you getting on with so and so? Got a great idea on this. In a working from home, they each become half-hour Zoom calls because you don't have that dynamic conversation. And I just think there's a sort of, it's hard to get a great esprit de corps going when you're all working from home. That team spirit, that sense of common purpose and energy. I think you don't need to be together every day of the week, but you need enough of that. And key moments, key meetings you talk about during the creation phase, project reviews, you can do a lot of those. But for us, winning business, I think we're in a B2B selling environment. I think you have to, you don't build relationships from scratch properly unless you actually meet somebody. I think the dynamic of the interaction when you're across a desk with somebody is very different than the sort of thing we're doing. We're doing now. So I'm a big proponent of the value of that office environment, and I just think that atomized world, eventually a company loses its soul. Values are massively important to me. To me, getting the right core values in a business is a real differentiator out there. But it's hard to create and sustain those values if all you are remote from each other. So to me, it was necessity for a period of time.
Yeah.
But now I completely agree, Mark. A blended world. we recruited people who joined sort of the beginning of lockdown, and they've never seen anybody in the company face to face. I mean, it's sort of like, or hadn't done, after the first sort of 6 weeks. I mean, that must be rotten.
Yes. Well, hopefully, I guess we can get the best of both worlds moving forward. I mean, to put you on the spot, think forward a year. Will Martin be going to the office 5 days a week, or do you think you'll be sort of roughly 50-50, or what's your own sort of gut?
Well, I'm lucky. I've got a number of offices around the country. I certainly probably not going to go to London probably quite as often, but I'll probably still be in London 2 to 3 days a week, and our offices. I might be working from home on a Friday. I think it's going to. It'd be quite interesting to see whether people want offices on long leases, or whether it will be, or whether the Togs or Regises or WeWorks of this world will actually do better. You think to yourself, well, they're in trouble, nobody wants to come in, but actually it could get business from the other direction, as people don't want to sign up to 5-year leases, but actually we'll just rent space in one of those places. Whichever, I don't know. I still think having an office which is yours, which has got your look and feel, your logo up, your values up on the wall, or whatever it is, your football machine or whatever it is you got in the office. I don't know. I still think, as an anchor point for a business, I still think that will. I still think that will be around in 12 months' time. Well, here's my real prediction. I think there'll be a swing back to it. I think eventually people will say, there's got to be more to my job than one blooming Zoom call after another. There's got to be another dimension that I'm looking for, and I think there'll be a swing back. If it means that people don't have to get on the 709 from Canterbury, or in your case probably the 609. In other words, I'll get into the office for 10, and it may be a little bit more flexible to avoid the sardine tin of a commuter train. I mean, that'll be a good thing, won't it?
Definitely. I think it's definitely opening the eyes to a lot more companies around, as long as people are delivering the output, and you can trust people to work from home when they need to, as long as they're ultimately delivering output, but married with the benefit of an office at those key moments for projects, that could be a game changer.
One last thing, Mark. I think you raise another good point, which we've talked about in Cancom, which is if you have hybrid working, and particularly a lot of home working, it requires a different management style, doesn't it? How do you manage somebody at home who you never see? Yeah. So that high trust environment is massively important, because that emotional, that contract between employee and company becomes a bit different, because you just don't see each other. You don't know whether they're, you got to be much clearer about the objectives and the KPIs and what you expect from them, because it's a lot of out of sight, isn't it? Yeah. And at the same time, it's not so much are people shirking, but are people working too long? Are people just burning themselves out because they're still because of this blur between work time and home time? So it'll throw up all sorts of interesting challenges for management as well.
That's an interesting point. I think, we're all kind of early on in navigating this. I think the next.
Yeah, we are. The book hasn't been written, Mark.
No, not yet. Well, you might be a good candidate to write it then next year. Well, I really appreciate your time today. You mentioned earlier on, I think, about a playbook that you perhaps would be. I'm going to look to Emma.
Emma, how can we help Mark on the team? Is it on the website? On our Cancom. Could you send the URL to Mark, so you can share everything? This isn't competitive advantage stuff. This is, all helping the world get back to normal.
That's really useful. Yeah, that'd be great for our network also to read and have a look at that as well. So really appreciate that, and the openness that you've shown. I think it's quite a hot topic, and your perspective is really valuable, having already opened the office and being perhaps a bit further down the journey than many others. And well, when you're in London in the future, perhaps we can grab a social distance coffee and catch up in person.
I'm often walking past Leadenhall Street, so I'll do that. And we can, if there's still a Pret-a-Manger open, Mark will go and grab a coffee in there.
Good stuff. Well, really appreciate your time today, and we'll wrap up, and hope you have a good rest of the week.
Cheers, Mark. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk. Bye-bye.